Hello everybody and welcome to my big influencer showdown championship post-mortem. That is right, I won the biggest prize pool in the history of Gods Unchained, so I'm making a video to brag about it like the rambling narcissist that I am. I will give you all the behind the scenes drama that went down. Actually, all the drama was on my end, but it was very dramatic for me at the time. You'll learn everything that was going on for me behind the scenes, and we're also going to dive into what I did right, what I did wrong, and try to figure out how to situate ourselves best for the tournaments coming this weekend. We're going to talk about all that throughout the video. First, I'm going to go ahead and dive in and give you all the stories that went down. And let's go ahead and first start with my match against Copperpitch. The format for the Influencer Showdown is going to be the same format for the two big events this weekend, the Americas Asia event and the Europe Africa area event. It's going to be you submit 3 deck lists, your opponent bans one of those deck lists, and that means you have to win with the other 2. So entering this event, I submitted 3 deck lists, and I'm going to go ahead and show those deck lists to you right now. So my game theory coming into this tournament is you have to submit 3 deck lists. However, your opponent gets to choose effectively the 2 deck lists that you have to win with. So optimized deck submitting here is to actually have your decks be very similar. So either submit 3 aggro decks, 3 combo decks, or 3 control decks. The reason why you do this is because they ban basically their worst matchup. And if all the matchups are the same to them, then they can't exploit it. If they've got, for instance, a control deck that always beats aggro, you submit an aggro, a combo, and a control deck, and they all always lose to the combo deck, they're just going to ban the combo deck. So you never get the benefit of your good matchups if you have a wide variety. Your opponent always gets to take advantage of it. Now, of course, this is oversimplifying things a bit. So I had to pick a lane, and I elected to go with the lane of speed. So we're going to go through and just quickly glance at my deck list. Some of these are kind of self-explanatory here. Here is just a Regen Nature list. This is my aggro nature list. We've got Gloam Druids, Wildfires, and Trial the Hydras for burst. The deck curves out at 5, utilizing only 1 Martyr because that's all I owned at the time. Kind of embarrassing, but we've updated the list. We removed the Chiron for the Martyr in the most recent build. But anyways, this deck is about pure speed, nothing else, and has some Regen synergy with Dagon, Dahlia, Wildfires, and Trial of the Hydra. Other list I had, this is fairly straightforward, don't need to talk too much about it. My classic Hidden Rush Deception. This list is all about pure speed, and that's what it delivers. It curves out at 5. Honestly, Blade of the White Flame, not even necessary in this deck. You can build it with just other cheap minions. This deck goes to the face fast and with lots and lots of speed. Hard deck to counter in this meta. So those were 2 decks that I performed very well with historically, and I felt pretty comfortable about submitting them. So for me, it came down to the 3rd list, and the 3rd list is this. This is a combo Magic Stormfield deck, and at the time that I submitted it, every game I played ended on turn 5 or turn 6, except games against Control Deception where I got cutthroated. I went 12-1 to the build up until the tournament and had tons of confidence brewing in the speed and reliability of this deck. However, since the tournament, it hasn't gone as well, but that's a story for a little bit later in the broadcast here. This deck is technically a combo deck. However, I thought that the combo deck was so fast that it counted as an aggro deck. Because if you went on turn 5 or turn 6, you're kind of an aggro deck in my opinion. So the question is this truly an aggro deck? Is this truly a broken meta breaker deck? I made the bet on this tournament that this was a absolute meta breaker. So basically, my 3 decks are all about speed. We're not playing a late game, and we want to knock our opponent out. And our opponent, no matter what he bans, we're going to be coming out here with speed. So let's go ahead and take a look at our opponent's deck submission. So my round 1 opponent was Copperpitch. He decided to come out and play Control. And Control is what he brought to the table here. This is classic Control War. We've got Hector now with Leech, which is an interesting inclusion because he forgot to include Leech in the list except for Demogorgons. I wonder if this was a deck building oversight on his part or not. But that was my interpretation of the list. I think it's a good, in theory, deck. I love the End the Wars from the new Light's Verdict expansion, and Therial fits very well into Control War. But that is what he brought as one of his 3 lists. Another list is Control Light, and Control Light is an absolute headache to face in this meta. Very tough deck. But generally, you have the classic 45-minute games with this. And interesting, only running 1 inescapable duty. Creative deck building for sure. But that is the other. And the third and final deck is Control Deception. So we see Copperpitch going triple control. I think from a game theory perspective, he took a good line here. The reason why it was a good line is he's got 3 control decks, and I get to choose what I want to face. So, if I'm sitting in Copperpitch's shoes, I'm automatically banning the combo deck. That's what I fully expect him to do, and he ended up doing that, by the way. So, I've got to figure out what is my biggest weakness in my lineup. My biggest weakness in my lineup, in my opinion, is my nature list. And what does my nature list match up worst against? Well, I actually think it's probably flipping against Deception. And maybe a slight underdog against Light, but has some chances. Still has some chances with a good draw. I felt like Control War was my worst matchup for my worst deck. So that's why I ended up banning Control War in game number 1. And I think this is the mentality everyone needs to take in with their match. Figure out a deck that you want to farm and try to see if if all 3 of your decks can farm 1 deck, you can guarantee yourself the win of the match. If you, obviously, nothing is usually guaranteed, but if you feel that way, then it's a good sign. If you're when you're fighting against your opponent, you've got to take a prophylactic approach of, well, what do they think they can farm? I felt like that Copperpitch would want to farm my nature list, and I thought that my nature list performs the worst against his war list, which is why I banned war for this match. So this is going to be a post-mortem where I'm only going to go over mistakes that I really made in the games that I could find. So we're going to be looking at specific moments where I made play mistakes here. And we're going to start off with game number 2. Game number 1, I actually gave myself an A+ grade for the way I piloted it and ended up winning that game. Game number 2 here, I get off to a bad start against Light with my nature. And here we make our first play mistake of the game. And the reason why this is a play mistake is because of the new transform rule. And we're going to see what's going to happen here. I thought that he kills my Dagon, and then I play Blade of the White Plane, and I get him back immediately from the Void. But that doesn't work out. When he transforms Dagon, it now doesn't go to the Void because of the new rule. Here, I make another play mistake because I'm rattled. I'm like, I just blundered. So now I play the Blade Fly. So let's go ahead and rewind what I should have done there. So on this turn right here, I should definitely play the Blade Fly. I've got nothing in my Void. So we can get the Blade Fly out on the board here, and then potentially get a Gloam Druid out next turn. And maybe GP and Gloam and potentially get value out of that rather than leaving myself exposed naked to the Light's Levy here. So that was a huge play mistake on my part, and of course I get punished to the maximum degree right there. And then the next turn, I have the option to remove the Pyramid Warden to get some Blade presence. I could have played Blade of the White Plane and remove this. Instead, I conserve the Pip and play the Blade Fly, which ultimately is just going to let him pick off my side relatively easily, unfortunately. So they're going to go ahead and make the trade there, and they get back the Martyr, and then they just go wide here. And this game is always just an uphill battle here, and we go on to lose game number 2. So we go on to win game number 3. Very exciting game. If you want to view that match, it is on my YouTube. I'll put a link in the description below if you're interested. Now we advance to the semifinal game, and we'll take on Villa Bestie from Team Perion. We'll go ahead and take a look at his deck list right now. Villa Bestie decided to come out here with an aggro mentality. As we can see here, this is a card draw magic list that comes at you with speed. It's utilizing Pirate Knowledge. Interesting, he only had 1 copy of in his deck. And just going to come at you with a bunch of speed. Keeping the theme here. Very fast looking light deck. Also, general same idea. And then here, Anubians, which were recently nerfed, which I thought was an interesting and gutsy add, as I did not consider this a top tier meta list. So for my perspective, I just decided to ban what I thought was his best deck, which was Aggro Light. And in this matchup, Villa Bestie bans Nature, which means I have to get a win with my combo magic list and my Nature list. So let's go ahead and take a look at some of the key moments from those games. So in game number 1, we're in this situation, and here I make a critical mistake. Now we can see here from this broadcast, we can see Villa Bestie's hand, but I can't see it. I've got Dark Knives, and I need to plan out my turn here very effectively. And since I'm going to end up hiding Avatar of Deception at the end of this turn, it is a huge mistake to put the knives on the cat because of Magic's AoEs. You just really want to find a way to get 2 attacks in, because after all, if I get 2 attacks in with the cat and the Avatar of Deception, I'm going to win anyways with the boosted stat line. So I go ahead, I play the knives on the cat, and you see me pause here because I'm in between 2 different lines, and then I hide. But this is a horrendous mistake from my end because I need to plan out that entire turn out the full way. Because the way I end up playing it, I leave myself exposed to, you guessed it, the top deck that ends up punishing. So Villa Bestie gets the Tracking Bolt top deck, which is going to basically save him. But again, keep in mind, I could have had the knives on the Avatar of Deception. This messes with the math the entire rest of the game, and could be potentially the game devastating losing mistake. Spoiler alert, it wasn't. But this was a critical error, and I just want to go ahead and point out my biggest mistake made in the finals itself was this mistake, and nobody talked about it on the original broadcast. You've got to play around the low AoE. This is an open deck list format. I knew he had it. And now we're not only going to get 1 extra attack in with the Avatar Deception, that's 3 missed points of damage. It's going to be hidden, and if he doesn't have an AoE, it's going to be another attack missed, which leads to 6 missed points of damage. You can already see the explosive barrels on our opponent's side, which makes things very, very awkward as they have no space to play minions. So it is horrendous for our opponent here, but this is a huge mistake that was made, and I feel like people kind of gave me a little bit of slack here. Let's go ahead and look at one more key moment in this game as well, right at the end. A little bit of backstory in the situation. The turn before I bought Vow of Champions, here I have a simple lethal attacking with the Arms Dealer face, and then playing Vow of Champions and using the God Power on the barrel to achieve lethal. However, my computer is freezing, and I am panicking here. It is absolutely absurd. The rope is going down incredibly fast, and we barely get this off. I didn't rope the entire turn because I was thinking about the situation. I roped because of computer problems, and that brings us to the next part of the broadcast. So we win game number 1 in the semifinals. You think we're feeling great, right? Well, my computer is completely shot. It's frozen. It can't do anything. And I'm messaging, I'm panicking, I'm like running around like a squirrel with its head chopped off. I don't know what to do. This is the biggest tournament in the history of Gods Unchained in terms of the top end prize pool. I'm in it. I'm one game away from making the finals, and my computer doesn't work. I reboot. As I'm rebooting it, it's just not working. I'm like, 5 more minutes, 5 more minutes, 5 more minutes. I realize that my computer isn't coming back. So I run into the other room and get on Ugor's computer. Log into my account on Ugor's computer. I bring my camera into Ugor's room, so I've kind of upgraded situations. If you notice, the background for the final games of this tournament was different. That is why. I did bring Charmander back there for a little bit of moral support and something for the fans to think that, yeah, this is Muse's room, even though it wasn't. So, in the biggest tournament ever, I've got a computer switch in the semifinals after game number 1. And then game number 2 against Vilabesti is the most famous finish of the entire tournament. And I'm going to show you one clip from this and give you a little bit of insight into what was going in my head at the key moment that broke the internet, effectively, in terms of Gods Unchained Twitter, at least. Now, we're going to turn our focus to what is probably the most important turn of the tournament. It's not the turn you're thinking of, it's the turn before the turn you're thinking of, if you've seen it here. In this situation, I had Librarian's Prayer the turn before, so I knew I could Form of Wisdom into a Form of Unity. Now, I'm sitting here wondering, how do I win? I know I can guarantee lethal 2 turns from now. I obviously can't see Vilabesti's hand. I can see Vilabesti's board. So I have to determine what's the probability of me surviving for 2 more turns versus what's the probability of me needing to win next turn. I have the second form of wisdom in hand right now. I elect to use the GP instead of playing the Ether Fox here. What this does here is I'm taking a 13% chance to win the game next turn. It's a 13% chance. I had 3 outs remaining in the list, and we went for it. And the next turn, of course, is the infamous turn. And I was still calculating in my head right at this moment, like, did I do this right? Did I do this right? Because I did indeed hit one of my 3 outs. I had a 3-outer. I needed to hit it, and we hit it. And of course, the final turn is one of the greatest moments of the entire tournament. This is turn 5, by the way. My read on the prior turn of not having 2 turns remaining in the game was absolutely correct. And here, we just got to go for it. Now, actually, I had 2 different ways. I had 2 different lethals in hand. And you see me rope here, and it's just to kind of double check my math. But I do play one of the 2 lethals. One of the lethals was actually storm fielding twice, then playing Form of Unity to the face, and then Form of Power, which would have been exactly 30 points of damage. The way I did it was the 2 Form of Unities, which is 28 points, plus the Form of Power at the end. It is indeed lethal and one of the finest moments of the tournament. So after having a little bit of RNG on our side, we make it to the finals, which is very exciting for me. We're taking on Meepo, who's also on Team Perion. In fact, shared the exact same list, pretty much from in terms of an archetype standpoint, as Villabesti did in my prior round. So I had a good feel for the matchup already, having just played it and won it. I elected to ban Light, which is the exact same thing I did in the round prior. And Meepo, wanting to change things up a little bit, bans Deception instead of the Nature deck that Villabesti banned. Game number 1, I queue in with Nature, which was banned by Villabesti in the round prior, and the Nature deck got a convincing, dominating win against his death list. Game number 2, he queues with Magic, I queue with Magic. The combo just doesn't come in time. I lose game 2 very convincingly, which sets up the deciding game number 3. And we'll fast forward to the critical moment in the third and final game. So the final game, all the marbles on the line, and it comes down to this. Can Meepo execute the lethal on this turn? I'm at 14. We see that he has 7 points of damage on the board and the Rune of Fire in the Sanctum and the God Power. If he could use Form of Power on one of his own minions, he would have lethal here. And this is a very nerve-wracking moment. He's going to go ahead and use his God Power on the guild minion to cycle for a card draw, gets Raving Necromancer, but he can't kill enough of his own minions is the issue here. The turn prior, we used our 4C, and we were able to set up guaranteed lethal for the next turn, which is why I'm sitting at the top left of the screen, incredibly nervous. We know if he doesn't have it here, we have lethal. So this was the key moment when it came down to the final game. I know it's kind of weird fast forwarding to the end, but I was having computer issues and didn't have my side of the broadcast, so this is about all we have here. And we can see Meepo coming up a few points short, and you can see it in his facial expression. He sees the storm coming. We drop the chicken, we drop another chicken, and of course we have Demetrius. And that was the key card on my 4C. I knew that if I had that, I had the Stormfield and the 2 Form of Unities, but that's only 14 points of damage each, which deals 28. But the final draft is indeed the final card that will be played here. We pause here just to make sure my math is absolutely correct. And that Form of Unity cost 1, which it didn't get completely stat reduced. So we had enough mana here right at the end and can execute the final draft to the big influencer tournament. So just like that, we make the meme dreams come true with the Stormfield OTK, and here are some fun statistics with the deck. So, I was 12-1 before the tournament with it. I was going off consistently on turn 5 or turn 6 every game. I felt like this deck was the real deal. It was the greatest thing of all time. It was the combo list that was faster than the aggro decks. A deck that had no weaknesses. A deck that was going to break the meta. I wake up on Sunday ready to play this in weekend ranked, post 18-0, and flex on the entire community. And naturally start off 3-3. So I ended up switching to Hidden Rush Deception and ended up with 12 wins in the weekend. But anyways, that is 1 point. After my weekend ranked, I decided I wanted to get more reps in. Was I just unlucky? What was going on? Because I was 12-1 with it prior, and it just felt like so great. It came through clutch in the tournament. Well, guess what? I ended up going 4-10 on the day. And then, if that wasn't bad enough, I went 4-6 the next day. So a combined 8 wins and 16 losses for my Pride and Joy deck that won the big tournament. 33% win rate after getting it done in the clutch. So my in conclusion is I made a bad deck decision with the Stormfield OTK and got lucky when it counted the most. So that's one thing to keep in mind for your deck list coming forward. Optimized strategy, again, is to have lists as similar as possible. And the reason being is your opponent gets to decide which two decks that you have to win with. So if you have an opponent who is specifically countering one type of list and you give him 3 different types of lists to choose from, he can zero in on the list that they beat and then beat you in the match. So triple aggro, triple control, triple combo. That would be what I would be leaning towards this next upcoming week. $50,000 on the line between the Europe and the Americas and Asia tournament. It is going to be quite hyped, and I wish you all the best of luck. Who knows? Maybe one of you will be making the victors video that I'll be watching next week.